Hi everyone. This session is all about IT programs, skill assessment and future stay pathways. Today we are joined by Mr. Vaibhav Patel, Director of Aussizz Group Sydney and a registered migration agent. He is one of the most established migration agent in Sydney area. Mr. Vaibhav Patel is an expert in general skill migration visas and handling skill assessment requirements, having helped countless migrants settled in Australia. Mr. Vaibhav Patel is a trailblazer in immigration consulting. Mr. Vaibhav will be waiting to take your questions. Please post your questions in the chat box and we will answer the queries at the end of the session. Also, we have some exciting giveaways for our attendees. We want to take the session deep and interactive, and we encourage questions and feedback. We have bumper cash prize to claim for the ones who leaves the most descriptive review under this Facebook post. Also, the most participative audience member from the chat box is eligible for the free giveaways such as free PTE coaching, IELTS coaching, PR consultation, etc. We encourage you to come be a part of our summit. Mr. Vaibhav, you can start.
Thank you very much, Nihal. Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. So today we are going to discuss about how an IT occupations or how you can lead to a PR when you complete an IT qualification. So let's start with the uh, requirement for a skills assessment. So as Nihal mentioned that we have bumper contest as well as the giveaways for the attendees. Uh, Now there are many IT occupations on the occupation list. Now there are two kind of lists. Number one is a medium and long-term skill list, which has actually broader options for a PR. Like let's say if your occupation is on medium and long-term skill list, you can apply for a surplus 189, 190, 491, 189, 186. There are a lot many options. Whereas if you go for a short-term skill occupation list, and if your occupation is on the short-term list, then you can only apply for limited visas. Generally, the visas that are on medium and long term list but are not on STSOL list is 189, 491 family sponsorship, 186. These are the major three visas which can lead to a PR, and they're not on. If your occupation is on a short term skill list, this visa program would not be available to these occupations. Now, generally, so we always recommend applicants to try and see if their qualification, their work experience are in line with the occupations which are on medium and long-term skill list. The occupations that would be, let's say, programmers, analyst programmer, developer programmer, software engineer, software tester, software and application programmer, then ICT business analyst, security specialist, systems analyst, multimedia specialist. The occupations like web developer, database administrator, project managers, support engineers, network administrator would fall under the short-term skill list. Now, just to bring it to your notice that let's say, for example, you get your skills assessed as a software engineer. There are higher chances that you can always get your skills assessed in analyst programmer or developer programmer or software engineer. The main reason is if you see the software tester's first four digit, which is 2613, and that is the same thing with analyst programmer, developer programmer, and software engineer. So when it's in the same group, there are higher chances that you can always switch to the another occupation as well. So if your first four digits of the codes that you have are same, that are more likely that we can have more assessments in the same. So we generally suggest, let's say, for example, somebody from with a skills assessment as a network administrator can also apply for a skills assessment as a computer network and systems engineer. Again, the reason is if you see the first four digits is 2631. So that's the first part. Now the skills assessment authority for this occupations, all the ICT occupations, the Australian Computer Society is the assessment body approved by the Department of Home Affairs. Generally, to get a skills assessment, there are two pathways. For the graduates from Australia, you have to have a relevant Australian qualification. And on top of that, you need to have at least 1 year of work experience, or you must complete a professional year course, which is delivered by lot of institutes, but through ACS again. So either you complete 1 year of work experience or complete a professional year course while being on a 485 visa that you generally get it once you complete your Australian qualification if it is 2 years. Overseas qualifications. If you have a bachelor degree or higher, which is ICT major, then there are two subsections in it. If your degree is ICT major, now the question is whether your degrees and the subjects that you have studied is related to the nominated occupation. So if you choose, let's say, for example, you choose a software engineer, but your qualification is highly relevant to network engineer, then your qualification will not fall under a qualification closely related to the nominated occupation. It will fall in qualification not closely related to the nominated occupation. So if your qualification is closely related to that occupation, so if you look at your subjects, if they are there are subjects that relate to your occupation that you've chosen, then you need 2 years of work experience again in the relevant occupation that you've chosen. So a lot of people we have seen that they made mistake, their degrees higher in highly relevant in networking, but then they have work experience as a software engineer. So they don't need 2 years of experience, they need 4 years of experience, which is the second part, where if your qualification is major in ICT, but not related to the nominated occupation, then you need 4 years of work experience to get the positive skills assessment. Now there are a few ways for overseas qualification. So this is another one, which is if your bachelor degree or higher degree, bachelor or master's or any other degree, are my ICT minor, then again there are two subsection to it. If your qualification is closely related to the occupation, then you only need 5 years experience in last 10 years, or you need 6 years of experience in entire history. But if your qualification is not related to the nominated occupation, you need 6 years of work experience anytime in the past in your work history. If your qualification is ICT major, for diploma or advanced diploma or associate degree. So it's not a degree level qualification, but your occupation is a degree level occupation. For example, person wanting to apply for a skills assessment as a software engineer, the skills assessment authority requires you to have at least a bachelor degree generally, and 𝐬𝐴𝐺 code also requires you to have a bachelor degree. But there is an option that you can apply for a skills assessment even though you have only diploma. So if your diploma is highly relevant to the nominated occupation, you need 5 years of work experience again in the last 10 years, or 6 years of experience in your in any time in the history. Qualification not closely related to the nominated occupation, you need 6 years of relevant work experience anytime in the past. So if your diploma is major but not related to the occupation, you need 6 years. Now the last part would be overseas qualification, which is not ICT qualification at all. So it's you have, let's say, the diploma in business, for example. Then you need 6 years of work experience in the past, and you also have to fill in the application form with an RPL form as well, which consists of the RPL stands for recognition of prior learning. So you have to include two projects. One project has to be within last 3 years, and another one has to be within last 5 years. So you cannot use any project which are more than 5 years old for one, and second project has to be within last 3 years. So it cannot be more than. Now, if your diploma is, there is a diploma, let's say you have a diploma, then you need 6 years of experience. If you don't have diploma at all, or you have no qualification, then you need 6 years of experience plus the RPL application. As I mentioned, RPL would again be the same. You have to use two projects. You need to provide an evidence of 8 years of work experience. Generally, for work experience, when you claim the work experience points, or when you apply for an ACS skills assessment, you need to make sure that only providing a work reference letter would not do the job. If you're claiming 8 years of experience or 2 years or 6 years, any work experience that you submit to ACS, you need to provide work reference letter that must mention your name, your job title, your duration of employment, full-time or part-time, and if it is part-time, they must mention the hours, which has to be minimum 20 hours per week, and the duties that you've done during your employment, and those duties should be related to the nominated occupation. If it is not relevant, then it might be assessed saying that it's not closely related to the occupation. So you need to make sure that your duties are in line with the occupation that you're choosing, or your occupation that you choose are in line with the duties that you're mentioning. With the work reference letter, you also have to provide in two form of paid evidence. So, two evidences that shows that your employment was paid. Could be your pay slips that has to have your name and the company name, a bank statement. Your name obviously will have be there, but the company's name must be reflected on your bank account statement showing the salary directly coming from the company. If the company, there is a deposit, but there is no company name on it, the ACS may not accept it. So then you can use probably a taxation record, superannuation or a provident fund, or any other document that you have to show that you have, you have been paid by this company, and you should be able to prove that this employment was paid employment, not a volunteer. Visa options for the IT graduates that leads to a permanent visas are general skill migration, which are point-based visas.
That's what we can expect.
Subclass 189, skilled independent visa, permanent visa, which is completely based on points. So you need to have minimum 65 points, and then the department conducts invitation round every 3 months, which is starting from January, then April, then July, and then October. So there are 4 rounds in a year. There are only 6,500 allocations for this financial year for this visa. So we haven't seen many invitations coming through in 189, but that's still not a bad option. If you are applying for a skill visa, you should always lodge the EOI. 190 state-sponsored visa. So this is also a permanent visa. However, this has to be sponsored by the state. So now you will learn in the later stage in this presentation about each state has a different requirement for a nomination. So you must meet that state's criteria to get nominated from that state, and then you can apply for state nomination with that particular state. And if the state approves your nomination, then you get an invitation in your skill select to apply for a 190 visa. The last visa option under the skill category would be a state nomination, regional nomination visa, which is 491. Now this can be sponsored by state or a family as well. So if you have a family member living anywhere except Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and if they are your blood relative, like your brother, sisters, cousins, first cousins only, uncle, aunts, then you can also claim the family sponsorship stream as well, which gives you 15 points. Even if you go for a state nomination, again, you have to look at which state you're going for, and you have to make sure that you meet the state nomination criteria for that state. And then if you're invited, you get the 491 visa invitation. And then later on, when you get your 491 visa, you have to live and work in the regional area for 3 years and show an annual income of 53,900 per year to qualify for 191. So that's a pathway to PR. That's why the 491 visa is generally called a pathway to PR. Now, you don't have to work in your nominated occupation when you're living and working in the regional area. And the regional area, again, are anything except Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane metropolitan areas. Everything else is pretty much regional. If you have an employer where you're working, and if your employer is happy to sponsor, then you can also apply for a 482 visa, which is, again, 482 has 2 streams. Short-term skill list, where if your occupation belongs to a short-term skill occupation list, you can only get 2 years visa, and this visa can be renewed one more time onshore, and then you have to go offshore to renew it if you want to renew further. But the 482 has another stream, which is a medium and long-term skill list. If your occupation belongs to a medium and long-term skill list, then you can apply for a 482 visa, and that's granted for up to 4 years. Now, if you are on medium and long-term list, you get a 4 years visa. You can work with a company for 3 years while holding a 482 visa, and work with the same employer for 3 years while on a 482 visa. You can also apply for a 186 visa under temporary resident transition stream, which is the next visa. That's a permanent visa. Now, in 186 visa, as I mentioned, there are 2 streams. Number one is a temporary resident transition stream, where people on 482 visa who completes 3 years with the same employer while holding a 482 visa, they can apply for a 186 visa under temporary resident transition stream. Candidates who are applying, who has 3 years of work experience already, have a positive skills assessment in their nominated occupation and minimum competent English, they can also apply for a 186 direct entry stream visa. And that's also a permanent visa. 494 visa, which is again a pathway to PR. So it generally is similar to 491. The only difference is this is sponsored by the employer. Again, you need to have an employer operating in the regional Australia, which is excluding Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. You have to live and work with that employer for 3 years and earn minimum 53,900, and then you can apply for 191. And that's also a permanent visa. That's why it's a pathway to PR. Now, to get a 494 visa, again, you need 3 years of work experience in your field. You need to have a skills assessment, positive for your occupation, and minimum competent English. Then once you get that visa, you continue working with your employer, who is located in the regional area, and this has to be in the with the same employer and for the same occupation that they have sponsored you. And last is the global talent visa. This is for the applicants who are highly skilled and they have reached the top notch of their career. They can apply under digital sector under global talent visa subclass 858 program. We will discuss the state nominations now. So as I mentioned, that 190 and 491 has a state nomination options. So the first state is New South Wales. For a New South Wales 190 nomination, you must have your occupation on a medium, NSW skill occupation list. If your occupation is on the list, that's the first tick. If you're residing in New South Wales for 3 months, then you will qualify. If you're not residing in New South Wales for 3 months or more, then you will not qualify, or you are currently employed in New South Wales in your nominated occupation. So let's say if you move from Victoria to New South Wales, but you're working in your field, you don't have to wait for 3 months to qualify for a New South Wales state nomination. If you, as soon as you start working in a nominated occupation in New South Wales, even though you moved a week ago, that's completely fine. You can qualify for NSW state nomination. Applicants with higher points generally gets invited first, and then so how the NSW works is they rank candidates based on their occupation, their number of years of work experience, their points, their English language ability, etc. Some occupations require 3 years of work experience in their nominated occupation. Most of the ICT occupation requires 3 years of work experience in the field, except a couple of them, which is web developer and multimedia specialist. So if you don't have 3 years of work experience, I would generally recommend maybe get your skills assessed under these two occupations so that you can also qualify for New South Wales state nomination for 190. With the state nomination for 190 in New South Wales, the process is once you make sure that you meet all these criteria, then you have to lodge an expression of interest. Once you lodge an expression of interest, make sure that you select NSW as your preferred state. You continue to live and work here and wait for your invitation. NSW generally conducts the invitation round end of each month. And if you're invited, you'll be required to submit all your documents that you claim the points for to NSW government. And if they're satisfied, they'll approve your nomination and you will receive an invitation in your skill select. Once you receive your invitation in your skill select, then you can apply for 190 visa through your skill select and then taking it to your IMI account. That's about 190 for New South Wales. For a 491, your occupation must be on the combined list for stream 1, and you must be living and working in regional New South Wales for 12 months. But generally, candidates with more than 3 months of work experience can be considered on case-by-case basis. So we generally recommend candidates who completes living and working in the regional New South Wales for 3 months in their occupation, they can apply for a stream 1 category after 3 months. Candidates who completes the study in regional New South Wales by living and working within the previous 24 months in regional New South Wales can apply under stream 2. Now, with stream 2, you just have to make sure that you completed 2 years of Australian study while living and studying in the regional New South Wales. The stream 3, you must hold a valid skills assessment for the occupation that appears on the preferred regions list, and you can apply it from anywhere. Now again, NSW opens the window every month, every 3 months generally. So let's say there was an invitation window for January month. Now the window will close today, and from tomorrow onwards they will start assessing the application, and maybe somewhere in February all the candidates who are selected will be invited to apply for a 491 state nomination with New South Wales. And once you get invited, you simply collect all your documents, apply your state nomination with the region where it is open, where your occupation is open on the list for a particular region for stream 3. And then if the region is happy to approve your nomination, you get invitation in your skill select, and you can apply for a 491 through your skill select, leading it to your IME account. The next state is Victoria, where you have to, there are 2 options, 190 and 491 again. For Victoria state nomination, you must be currently living and working in Victoria in a target sector using STEM skills, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and I think management, mathematics. So if you are in medical field, sorry. So if you are, living and working in Victoria in one of these sectors, which the target sectors includes generally health, advanced manufacturing, digital, which is including cybersecurity, digital gaming. So you just simply lodge an ROI. If you meet this criteria for 190, if you're living and working in one of these sectors, then you wait for Victoria to select candidates, and whenever they select from the ROI, you get an email from them. Again, you submit all your documents to an Victorian government. Once they assess your documents and they're happy to nominate, you will receive an invitation in your skill select. The skill select number will need to be given to them during the application. So that's part of the application for a 190 nomination anyways. For a 491, again, the same criteria that you must be currently living and working in Victoria, but in regional Victoria, in the target sector using the STEM skills, and your target sectors are the same as the other one. You need to lodge an ROI, and then ROI stands for registration of interest. You lodge an ROI. If you are selected, Victorian government will contact you by email and invite you to apply for a state nomination for 491. You have to then submit all your documents to Victorian State Nomination Authority, and once they're satisfied with your documents, they will nominate you and you will receive your invitation in your skill select. Next state is Canberra, which is Australian Capital Territory. They have few pathways for 190 and 491. Number 1 is working in Canberra, which is your occupation has to be on Canberra's critical list. Now, many of IT occupations are there, so that's a good news. And you have to be working 6 months full time in any field in Canberra. So if you're working and living there for 6 months, you can qualify for a Canberra matrix. After you complete this criteria, and if your occupation is on, so if after you complete 6 months of full-time work experience, which has to be continuous and without any gap in between, and your occupation has to be open on the list, then you collect your points and you lodge a ACT matrix, which counts your points based on like living in Canberra, working in Canberra, whether you're working in a nominated occupation or not, what's your English language ability. Based on that, there are points awarded under the matrix system. You lodge the matrix, and if you're invited, again, Canberra government will rank candidates based on high point to low points. So the higher points person gets first. So if you're selected, you receive an invitation from ACT government. You submit all your documents to ACT government, proving that you have worked 6 months and all the points that you've claimed. And if they are satisfied with all your documents, they'll approve your nomination. And again, you receive an invitation in your skill select. For 491, your occupation has to be on the ACT list. on a critical list, and you have to be working 3 months part-time continuously without any gap. And after 3 months, you can apply for a Canberra metrics. Again, ACT metrics, you are awarded the points. And once, if every month, they conduct 2 invitation rounds. If you are selected, you receive an invitation from ACT government to apply for a state nomination with ACT through this metric system. And then if once you submit all your documents, if they're satisfied, they'll approve your state nomination and uh, invite you in your skill select. Now, with the Canberra, one thing to keep in mind is Canberra government does not give you an opportunity to submit additional document. That means that if you do not submit the complete application, the ACT government may not approve your state nomination and not contact you as well, asking for more documents. They'll simply make the decision based on the documents you have submitted to them. So this is very critical. If you do not submit your documents on time or with the application, they do not give an opportunity to submit additional documents later on. With Canberra, there is one more pathway that was recently added, was a business category. So if you operate a business in Canberra for 6 months, you can qualify for 190. Now the business ownership has to be at least 51% of the applicant. And for 491, you have to operate the business for 3 months. For 190, you have to operate the business for 6 months. Now it can be an existing business that you can purchase, or you can build a new business and meet the criteria. For 190, your business has to meet certain turnover requirement, which is $100,000 for 6 months. And you must have received a salary for yourself as an employee of the business for at least 26,000 or more. And you must employ one Australian employee for you to qualify for a business category on top of the 6 months business experience requirement. For 491, you have to conduct the business activity for 3 months. Again, you can purchase the existing business or build a new business there. Here, the requirement is $50,000 turnover in 3 months' time. You have to receive a salary of $13,000. You must have employed one Australian citizen or a permanent resident while in your business while operating the business for 3 months. And again, you apply for a metrics. If you're selected, you get invited for 190 or 491. Once you're invited, you submit all your documents, and then if you're selected, you get the 190 or 491 invitation depending on the ones that you've selected. The good news is for the business category is there are separate allocations that they've put in. So the invitation round happens same time, but the business category will be invited probably faster than other candidates because there are less candidates in the business category. For South Australia now, South Australian State Nomination Authority is quite fairly simple and straightforward. For 190 nomination, if you are a graduate from South Australia, you must complete at least 1 year of study in South Australia, which is bachelor degree or higher, to qualify under South Australian graduate pathway. You must be currently working in your nominated or closely related occupation for 6 to 12 months. Here depends on the occupation. Some occupation requires 6 months, some occupation requires 12 months. So we have to work and check each occupation. Depending on your occupation, you have to meet the work experience requirement. Once you meet both the criteria, you apply for a state nomination with South Australian government. Unlike New South Wales, Victoria, and Canberra, where they have a pre-invitation process, there's nothing like that. In South Australia, what you do is just simply collect all the documents once you meet the criteria and submit an application with South Australian government. If they're satisfied, they'll approve your state nomination and you receive this invitation in your skill select. South Australian residents who are working in South Australia, there is another pathway for the candidates who did not study in South Australia but currently working in their occupation in South Australia. Now, for generally IT occupations, the work experience requirement is 12 months to 24 months. Again, that also depends on which location you're working at and which occupation you are applying for. If you're working in Adelaide, you might have 24 months of work experience requirement for most of the IT occupation. But if you're working outside in outer regional South Australia, which is pretty much outside Adelaide, then you have to work only 12 months for 491. And for 190, if you're working outside Adelaide, which is outer South Australia, you have to work 6 months. But if you're working in Adelaide, you have to work for 12 months in South Australian graduate pathway. For 491, you again South Australian graduate pathway and work currently working in South Australia pathway. There are two options. If you've completed 1 year of study in South Australia, again your occupation has to be on the list and you have to work minimum 6 to 12 months. Again, depending on the occupation, the criteria will change. For South Australian resident as well, you have to be currently working in your nominated occupation for 6 to 12 months, or living and working in outer South regional South Australia for 12 months. And in some cases, they do grant the work exemption, work experience requirement exemption. So you do not have to be working in your nominated occupation, and you can apply through ROI process in South Australia as well if you are working in outer regional South Australia for 12 months in any occupation. Next state is Tasmania. For 190 pathway, your occupation has to be on Tasmania's skilled occupation list, which is called TSOL, Tasmania Skilled Occupation List. And you're currently working in Tasmania in your nominated occupation for 35 hours per week, which is full time, for at least 6 months before you can apply for a state nomination with Tasmania. Again, similar to South Australia, you just simply, once you meet the criteria, you submit an application with Tasmanian government, and they will assess your application. If they approve your nomination, you receive an invitation in your skills select. Another pathway is for the Tasmanian graduate who has completed 2 years of qualification in Tasmania, and you need to provide a career plan to demonstrate that the Tasmanian qualification will increase your ability to find employment in your occupation in Tasmania. And you can apply for Tasmanian graduate pathway for 190. And again, if they approve your nomination, then you get invitation in your skill select, and you can apply for the 190 visa. And once that's granted, that's your permanent residency. Next one is Tasmanian 491. For Tasmanian work pathway, you have to be working at least for 30 hours, 35 hours in Tasmania for 6 months immediately prior to the application. And the work experience does not have to be in your nominated occupation. It can be in any occupation with skill level 1, 2, or 3. And if your occupation is above the skill level 1, 2, or 3, above skill level 3, then you have to also, your employer will have to provide additional documents to justify that they are not able to find local employees from Tasmania, and therefore they had to employ you for this role. Another pathway is Tasmanian graduate pathway. If you complete at least 40 weeks 𝐒𝐈 register course from Tasmanian Institute in Tasmania while living and studying in Tasmania, and provide a career plan to demonstrate that Tasmanian qualification will increase your ability to find employment in your nominated occupation, then you can apply for a 491 nomination with Tasmanian government. There are two more pathways. Next one is small business owners pathway. You can establish a new business. Here you cannot buy a new business, existing business. You have to establish your own new business and operate it for 6 months and demonstrate that your business is likely to generate an income for yourself, a personal taxable income for yourself of 53,900, which would meet the criteria for surplus 191 visa after 3 years. So if you can demonstrate that your business can generate that much money, so let's say, for example, you operate the business for 6 months, you earn $30,000 as your own salary as taxable income, then that means that you will be earning, end of the year, you'll have at least 60,000 or more. That is beyond 53,600. So therefore, you're likely to meet the criteria. So you just have to demonstrate that you will be able to generate that much income. Next part is family category in Tasmania. So if you have an immediate family member who is a permanent resident or citizen and living there in Tasmania for 12 months, then you can apply for a family sponsorship category as well. This person who is related to you must be related to you by either being a parent or brother, sister, child, aunt, uncle, or grandparent. Here, some states may not accept first cousins. So you have to always make sure that you look at the criteria very carefully when you apply for a family category in different states. Western Australia is the next state where we have three streams actually, stream 1, 2, and 3. There is one for a graduate stream, which is the candidates who have completed 2 year study in Western Australia while living and studying there, and their occupation is on a Western Australia's graduate stream list, which most of the most of the IT occupations are. At least you need 6 months of work experience anywhere in Australia, or you need a job offer or contract of employment in Western Australia in your nominated occupation for you to qualify for a Western Australia state nomination. There is another general stream for applicants who are applying for, who are willing to move to Western Australia. So your occupation has to be on Western Australia skilled migration list, Schedule 1 or 2. And for Schedule 1 occupation, you must have at least 1 year of work experience in Australia or 3 years of overseas work experience in your nominated occupation. If your occupation is on Schedule 2, you don't need a work experience, but you need a 12 months of full-time employment contract in your nominated occupation from Western Australian employer. If you do have this, you lodge an expression of interest. Western Australia generally conducts invitation round again mostly every month. If you're selected, you receive an invitation to apply for a Western Australia state nomination from Western Australian government, and you get 28 days to submit all your documents along with your job offer if you have to apply for if you have to provide a job offer for 12 months full time. And then once you submit your documents and if they approve your state nomination, you receive an approval from the state, and then you receive an invitation in your skill select to apply for 190 or visa, right? Or 491 as well. It's the same criteria for Western Australia. For Northern Territory, they're quite fairly simple. If you complete 2 years study for 190, your qualification must be completed from NT institution, so Northern Territory based qualification, and you need to demonstrate that you have full-time work rights right now, and you have genuinely put in efforts to find relevant employment in your nominated occupation, or show that you have already been working for 6 months full-time in your nominated occupation or any other occupation as well. So the second part of, so you must have completed 2 year study, but second part is depending on which occupation you're working in, but you need to show that you have demonstrated by working 6 months there that you are, you have a genuine intention to continue to live and work in NT. NT work pathway. So for the candidates who did not study in Northern Territory but are currently living and working full time in their nominated occupation for at least 2 years, they can apply for 190 and demonstrate that they have a full-time job offer again for further 12 months. Then you can apply for 190. For 491, for NT graduates, you just have to complete 2 year study and you qualify. So candidates who could not apply for a 485 visa or who cannot apply for a 485 visa, but they have the skills assessment in their occupation and they've completed 2 year study in Northern Territory, they can apply for a 491 pathway in Northern Territory. There is another one, NT work pathway, where you must be currently working in Northern Territory for 12 months. Currently residing in Northern Territory for 12 months and working at least 6 months full time in your nominated occupation, and you have further 12 months of job offer from the same employer if possible, right? So if you do not have the same employer, you have to demonstrate that you have further 12 months of employment opportunity there in Northern Territory. The next one is Queensland. So right now, Queensland state nomination program is closed for most of the occupations, and but last known criteria are, and they keep changing as well. So you have an occupation on QSOL, which is working in Queensland list, and your work experience, you have to work 6 months full time in your nominated occupation, and you must have at least proficient English, and you need to have a 12 months of job offer from the same employer where you're working. For 491 from Queensland, the criteria is that your occupation has to be on Queensland list, working in Queensland list, and you have to be working full time for 3 months in regional Queensland for you to qualify for a 491 nomination and demonstrate that you have an employment for next 12 months as well available for you. And the last pathway with Queensland is business category, which is currently open. You can apply. You have to purchase an existing business and pay $100,000 and run that business for 6 months. Business based in regional Queensland must be at least 2 years old to qualify. And you also have to employ one Australian employee and run that business for 6 months. And after 6 months, you can apply for a business category in Queensland. Now we are open for questions. So Nihal, if you can probably help me with the questions, if you have any.
Yeah, so there are few questions which are being asked by our participants. So first question is from Denika. Her question is the COE with the salary enough, or do we still need to present pay slips for additional requirements?
Sorry, is what?
Is the COE with salary enough, or do we still needs to present pay slips for additional requirements?
For a skills assessment, generally you need to have the work reference letter and two form of paid evidences. So the employment contract of employment is not sufficient to show that you were getting paid. So you have to provide a pay slip and a bank statement, or pay slips and tax return, or bank statement and tax return, something that shows your name and company names and that demonstrate that you're getting paid. The contract of employment, COE, is not the evidence that you're getting paid. Is an evidence that you were offered this role and this is how much you were offered, but it does not show that you were receiving salary on a regular basis. So I hope that answers your question.
So second question is from Prashil. It's a big question. So if a person A has 10 years of experience as system administrator and has qualification assessed, and ACS has deducted 2 years and award 8 years and deemed of assessed, what if a person A does not work for next 1 year? If a person gets an invite by DOH for a visa, can person A still claim work experience for 8 years as he knows only last 10 years experiences counts?
Yes. So generally, let's say, when you claim your skilled employment with Australian government, if you stopped working for a year, your work experience for last 8 years is still, so 8 years in last 10 years is still there, right? Yes, but then if you stop working for, let's say, more than 2 years or 3 years, and then you have a gap for 3 years that you did not work, and your employment, 8-year employment is not in last 10 years anymore, then yes, you cannot claim the 8 years. You go down in the bracket, which is the 5 years in last 10 years then. So, how it works generally is when you lodge an expression of interest, the EOI calculates the points by itself. If your work experience is more than 10 years old, the expression of interest skill select system itself will deduct that work experience from your calculation. But yes, if your work experience, if you stop working, and if you, I think 1 year will still be fine because it will still fall within last 10 years. Because you worked 8 years and then you had 1 year gap, still it's 9 years. But if you have a longer break, you may not qualify for claiming the entire 8 years of employment. So simple, rule of thumb, keep it fairly simple. If your work experience is 8 years within last 10 years, you can claim. If it is not 8 years in last 10 years, you cannot claim.
Danika again asks, I have a bachelor's degree in computer science. I'm planning to study master's in business information system in Sydney. Will I have a chance for postgraduate and PR even if Sydney is not regional?
So postgraduate visa, yes, for sure. So subclass 485 visa is available to all the candidates who completes the 2 years of study in Australia. So if you complete a master degree in Sydney as well, you can apply for 485 visa, which is a graduate visa that you get after completing master degree. And now you get 3 years of 485 visa if you complete a master degree. So yes, you will be able to get that 3 years visa. With regards to PR, Now, during these 3 years, either NSW changes their criteria for that work experience requirement for 3 years, or you complete the 3 years of work experience while you are on this 485 visa. Then yes, you can also qualify for a 190 nomination. Or if you complete the points for 189 visa as well, you can lodge an EOI for 189. And if you're selected from that queue as well, you can also apply for 189. So yes, and as you know that the requirement keeps changing. So in the past they had 1 year of work experience requirement, then it was removed. Now they've added 3 years of work experience requirement. You never know if it can be changed to 5 years as well, or it can be changed to 2 years or 1 year as well. So as and when the state sees that, okay, we have a lot of applications, the criteria will go up. If there are less applicants, then the criteria will probably change again to minimum. So if you study a master's of information system or information technology from Sydney, you still have a possibility to apply for a permanent visa and as well as graduate visa.
Next question is from Elvin. I'm not an ICT major, but I have a national certificate too on hardware and software installation and maintenance. Also, I have 4 years of experience as system administrator in Abu Dhabi. You think I'm qualified to get an Australian visa?
Sorry, Nihal, what was the qualification? What was the qualification, Nihal?
Oh, on hardware and software installation and maintenance.
Okay, so if your qualification is not major in ICT, and if you have a private certification, then it will not be accepted. So you need to go back and then maybe meet 8 years of work experience requirement to get a skills assessment with an RPL. If you have a vendor certificates, that may be counted towards diploma, so then your work experience requirement will go down to 6 years. But it depends on what sort of certificates you have. But if they are only private certificate from private providers, it may not be accepted. The certificates from vendors like Cisco, Microsoft can be accepted as a part of the application for skills assessment.
Next question is from Prashil. Uh, is it a must to have a full scale assessment for a visa 482?
For 482 visa, unless it is mandatory to have a skills assessment, you don't need the skills assessment. So it's most of the IT occupations do not require work experience. If you have a relevant qualification, which is bachelor degree or higher, and you have minimum 2 years of experience in your nominated occupation, then you don't really need to have a skills assessment because you meet the criteria anyways. There are only few occupations which requires a skills assessment like chef, cook. So some trade occupations requires a skills assessment. It's mandatory, but for IT occupation, it's not mandatory. So you will not need the skills assessment.
Prashil wants to continue his question. Planning to do Masters of Business Information System at Turin. Which occupation I will qualify for skill assessment?
So if you study Master of Business Information System, it also depends. So only the qualification name does not indicate which occupation you'll be able to get, but it also depends on your subjects that you choose during your studies. So if you have subjects which are, so from the name of the degree, it sounds like you'll be able to get ICT business analyst and systems analyst easily. But again, if you choose subjects that are, let's say, related to security, database, then you might be able to also get the skills assessment in those ones. If your subjects, there are subjects related to programming as well, then you might be able to also get a skills assessment in programming. So the only name of the degree does not matter. The subjects that you study within that degree matters as well. We have clients where both of them have studied Masters of Information Systems or Business Information Systems, but one has chosen more programming languages and the other person has chosen more of analytics and business subjects, which probably qualifies one as a business analyst, the other one as a programmer. So it really depends on the subjects, but yes, I believe that you will be able to get a systems analyst as well as ICT business analyst after completing this course.
Next question is from Darwin Patel. Can we remotely work for a Sydney-based employer and target regional Australia like Canberra, Perth, Adelaide for 491?
Now, it depends on each state. Some states do not accept you working for another employer. But now that we have noticed that now that uh, work from home and remote working has become a very uh, acceptable form of employment. Um, I believe that yes, some state will accept it, but for example, let's say Canberra does not accept if your employee is not actively operating in Canberra. Um, yes, Sydney-based company having a branch in Canberra will still be fine. Same thing with South Australia. They will not accept if your company is not located in South Australia. But maybe do it down the time they might even change this because now the companies have started learning or even the state have started learning that yes, a lot of companies provides work from home and they're completely work from home. No need to go to the office. You never see your office as well. So then yes, it's still acceptable in many states like New South Wales accepts it, but not all the states accept it. So it depends on which state you're targeting. If you are targeting 491, the best idea is to probably work for a Sydney-based company and live in regional New South Wales, because the New South Wales we have seen that they have started accepting this.
Next question is from Vikram. I have got 482 visa from my company. Is it easy to apply for PR as soon as I reach Australia?
If your company has sponsored you for a 482, yes, you can come over here once you come to Australia. If you do qualify for any of these programs, you can certainly apply. There is no time that limit, or there is nothing that limits you from applying for a permanent residency. If you apply for 189 and you get invited, you can apply for 189. If you get invited for 190, you can also apply for 190. Or if you qualify for any other visa, let's say you find another employer who's willing to sponsor you for 186 visa, you can also apply for 186 and the direct entry stream as well. However, again, you have to follow this process, get your skills assessment, and then lodge your EOI or find an employer and then get them to sponsor you for 186 visa.
Next question is from Abel. Can I study in Wollongong and can work in Sydney? Will this affect my PR point?
So if you're trying to claim studying and living in the regional area, which is studying with Wollongong and living in Wollongong, but only coming to Sydney for work. So when you claim regional study points, the criteria is that you have to live and study in regional area. There is nothing mentioned about work. So therefore you can work anywhere. So you can even work in Sydney and claim 5 points for regional study. And you can also apply for a state nomination accordingly, because you only came to Sydney for work. You were living and work studying in regional New South Wales in Wollongong. It's completely acceptable.
Next question is from Prashil. For my wife, she just got a work offer contract from Australia for an accountant role for visa 482. Does she needs a full skill assessment from CPA?
No. So for 482 visa, again, as I mentioned, there are only some trade occupation that requires a skills assessment as a 482 visa program, as a part of the 482 visa program. All the other occupation do not have any compulsory requirement to have a positive skills assessment, unless your occupation has a registration requirement, which I believe there is none for accountant general. But yes, if you're getting sponsored as a taxation accountant, you may need a registration. But for accountant general, you don't need a registration. I generally, the company has to be registered for accounting purpose. So I would say no, you don't need the skills assessment. Uh, as long as your wife has a bachelor degree, the company, and 2 years of work experience, the company can sponsor for 482 visa.
Next question is from Davin again. Following up on Vaibhav's answer to my question, for instance, an MNC says XYZ has its head office in Sydney and branch office in Melbourne, Canberra. Do I need to take a transfer from Sydney to Canberra, or is it sufficient to just move to Canberra and continue working remotely for 190 491 ACT?
So generally, we recommend yes, you should get a transfer to the local branch. Uh, Obviously, the state government does not have any uh, you know uh, information about what work you're doing, so or they can't check it. So what happens is basically if you're working in your occupation and your work location is still Canberra, doesn't matter you're working for the MNC, and you might be doing work on some other projects that's not based in Canberra but somewhere else, but you're employed in Canberra, so that's completely fine. Your employer has to be located in Canberra, generally for Canberra nomination. So yes, it is acceptable if you get a transfer, and it is recommended as well that you get a transfer, because you will be required to ask your manager to provide a statutory declaration from your employer or your manager confirming that your duration of employment, your position, your salary and everything on the statutory declaration.
Uh, I think that's all question which we have got till now. Do we still have more question coming, guy? Coming?
In the meantime, I just realized that I would probably like to cover, um, going back again to the visa programs, and we can cover up the global talent program as well, which I haven't covered in my slides. So we can just go back and discuss that. So with global talent visa, the candidates have to prove that they're highly talented candidates. So number one is, so you must fall under the sectors. So if you are an ICT graduate, obviously you already fall under the digital sector of global talent. So that's completely fine. So that's the first criteria for a global talent visa, that you have to nominate and a, a, a target sector. You have to choose one. So digital sector is the target sector for IT occupation. So that's met. Second criteria is you have to be able to prove that, or you must be able to prove that you are highly talented person. So let's say you have any patents under your name, you have received any awards, international recognition of your work, or you're working in a high, let's say a big multinational company, and you're in high positions like a director or vice presidents, or where you're heading you're in most senior positions, not in mid-level positions, but if you're in senior positions, then you can also qualify, you can meet that criteria. So you provide an evidence of your talent basically through any patents that you have, any softwares that you have invented, and that is extremely successful, or if you have any international or national recognition from similar bodies, like let's say for example Australian Computer Society. Uh, you need a nominator who is either an Australian permanent resident or citizen, and must be prominent in the same field, or you can get a nominator who is an Australian company. So generally, if you do not have a nominator, we recommend going for ACS, because Australian Computer Society can also nominate you for the global talent visa. So you need a nominator. And the last part is we have to show that either you're already earning 153,800 or $600 per year, or you have an ability to attract this much salary or higher than this, or you are a PhD graduate. Then you provide your evidence of PhD thesis, any research that you published, any publications you had, any articles that your research articles were printed somewhere or displayed somewhere as in recognition of your work. Then that can also work. Now, if you're a PhD graduate, if you are not working in your occupation, if you're not working in uh, you know senior positions, that's still acceptable. In many cases, we have got an approval. So I would say if you have a PhD qualification completed within last 3 years, then you can also qualify for a global talent visa. You just have to demonstrate that how you will be able to earn 153,600 per annum over the time when you get your PR. So you have to show or demonstrate an ability to attract that salary. Your target sector, again, because this session is about ICT, I would assume that all of you will fall under the digital sector. So yes, that can definitely work in. So that's about global talent visa. So if you have any questions, you can ask us.
Yeah.
We wait for. Sorry.
Yeah. So there is a question from the Denika again. Is there a high chance to get visa sponsorship from employers in Sydney? Do you have a link of list of employers providing sponsorships?
Unfortunately, we do not have the links of an employers. However, from my experience, I have noticed that yes, the companies in Sydney generally and anywhere in Australia right now are happy to sponsor candidates for 482 or 186 visa, depending on what criteria you meet. Uh, but obviously, generally, they would want to sponsor you for 482 first, and if they're confident, they might even agree to sponsor you for 186. So the reason that the companies may not agree to sponsor for 186 compared to why would they agree to sponsor for 482 is because the 482 has the condition that you have to work with the sponsoring company for the duration of your visa, and it's not a permanent residency, whereas 186 visa has no condition as such, while your commitment to work for that employer is 2 years, but there is no condition on your visa. So therefore, 186 visa is, generally the companies may not agree straight away unless you have demonstrated your commitment to the company. But the companies, definitely we have experienced that the companies agree to sponsor for 482 visa in Sydney and even other locations.
Uh, Anyone wants to ask any more questions?
We will wait for 1 minute or so
Yeah.
before we end the session. And if we don't have any further question, Nihal, I think I can then proceed further to end the session.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's all question which we have for today. Thank you so much for attending the session. Don't forget to leave your reviews for this session. A review link is shared in the chat box. Your feedback is much appreciated. Don't miss out our next info sessions on exciting topics. Join straight away through the links in the chat box.
So now we may leave the session and you're invited to join other sessions as well if you wish to attend any other sessions that we have for the day. And these sessions are going to run for 5 days. So we would like to see you again somewhere in other sessions as well. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.